All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. Super excited. Daniel Rodriguez, Chief Marketing Officer at Simplr, is going to be joining us today. Daniel, why don't you say hello to the CX Nation, my friend?
Hello, everybody in the CX Nation. It's great to be in your ears.
So, guys, today we got a really cool one. Daniel and his team at Simplr are building not only some awesome technology, but they're helping businesses all over think about customer experience optimization, thinking about all the things that we're constantly talking about and planning for and building into our own teams and our own businesses. And Dan's going to walk us through the story today and give us an awesome sense for some of the things that they're working on. So Daniel, why don't you spend the first couple of minutes, man, set the stage for the CX Nation, give them a sense for how did you get into this whole wild world of being a customer-focused business leader, and give us some of the stepping stones that led you to being in a position that you're in today as the CMO at an awesome company like Simplr.
Yeah, I think that probably like most people, we have probably been armchair quarterbacks of customer experience as consumers for many, many years. I mean, I know when I read Tony Hsieh's book about customer service and customer experience going back, I think he wrote that book maybe 2008.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
And he was reflecting on Zappos, and he was reflecting on customer experience really being a differentiator for a business and how important customer service was in acquiring customers, in creating this flywheel effect of people doing word of mouth marketing for your brand.
Yep.
And I, as a Zappos customer and somebody who fundamentally, I think, felt connected to that brand. And I'll just tell you this really quick story too. I ordered a pizza from this like nicer pizza place called Upper Crust Pizza that we have here. It's a chain, but here in Boston. And the pizza gets delivered. This is going back about 10 years. Pizza gets delivered, and I go to pay, and they said no charge. And I said, excuse me, what do you mean by that? Right. And he said, this pizza was purchased for you by Zappos. And then I opened up the box, and there's like a print on the top of the box. And it was like, surprise and delight moment brought to you by Zappos. We hope you like this. Right. And I mean, this is exactly the type of using, this is where I think marketing and customer service really blend into each other. So I was kind of fascinated just by this idea of how can you build a brand through great customer service? And as I then got into this space, I was fortunate enough to be able to get a job at a company that, and the reason I joined this company was there, the vision of this company is we as consumers have become like Veruca Salt, basically, increasingly, right? I mean, 10 years ago, I think I was relatively forgiving, although I was, interested in working with companies and brands that I felt like were meeting me on my terms. I must say, in the past just couple of years, because of Amazon Prime Now, I am impatient. I really am more willing to make a change with something I was going to buy, or just kind of cut a brand out of my own, loyalty, like kind of a little more quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I just feel like, you know what, I've got choices. Like I can do other stuff with it. So I mean, getting into this space, I think when you kind of see this trend of consumers are becoming more impatient, and brands really need to focus on how they are going to prevent neglecting these customers, because neglecting these customers is going to lead to fewer of them in the future.
Definitely.
And we're going to, people are going to go on social media and blow you up in ways that you do not want to be blown up. So I just felt like this is just such an interesting psychology experiment in many ways to kind of be in this space.
Yeah, it's spot on, man. And the other thing too is that you mentioned Amazon, but you're right. When you just stop and take a minute for a second, you've got companies like Amazon, Uber, for folks that are in big cities, Seamless or Grubhub or some of these Uber Eats, food delivery. They have changed all of our wiring for what expectations look like around you have number one, a great product experience, right? You know exactly how to find a thing, buy a thing, order the thing, and then you're ready to rock and roll. But you're right, Dana, this has changed our wiring. All of us are becoming, whether we realize it or not, modern consumers are going to become antsier. They're going to be less patient than ever before. And then let's call it what it is. Some of the companies that we just named there, those are pretty large, extremely well-run, super intelligent businesses. SMBs and mid-markets across the world are going to have similar expectations when people are buying from them. They're going to want smaller companies and mid-sized companies to have that same ability to deliver an incredible experience. So you're right. It's interesting. It's almost like all of our consumer-based psychology, it's changing, and those expectations are probably going to continue to get more and more demanding as we move into the future. And especially as more companies are doing an incredible job of setting up their versions of their Amazon or the Uber or the expedited services that we're all getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Those company examples, they are big companies. That is true, and I think that you do get some economies of scale sometimes at large companies. But I will say this: I've also had some really terrible customer experiences with large companies, and I've had some amazing bespoke, customer service, or just, when I say customer service, sometimes I'm referring to the pre-sale as well as post-sale,
Sure,
just like
totally.
interacting with the brand, right?
Yep.
I've had, amazing experiences with just, like a mom and pop type of store, and I actually think it starts with the mentality that senior leadership at the organization has. Like, are we going to invest in the customer relationship, or are we going, meaning that we think of it as part of our revenue driver, or is it going to be a cost center? And we are going to just squeeze blood from the stone until people cry uncle and leave, right? It's not the kind of thing where, Zappos wasn't customer obsessed only when they got big. Like, they were customer obsessed when they were small, right? And you see this with other brands. You see this with other brands as well. Big time.
And one other thing, I love that we're kind of leading today's episode off with this idea of Zappos, because there's one other element, Daniel, that Tony Hsieh and the Zappos team did so damn well. They were talking about EX, or the power of employee experience, culture, employee engagement. I would argue now there's a huge wave. Now with COVID, you got every company in the world understands not only are people looking for new jobs, and they're able to go get jobs all over the world, right? With the power and the spread of remote work in general. But Tony Hsieh and those guys, they knew that EX equaled an incredible CX decades ago, frankly. And I don't know, for some of our listeners, if you haven't had an opportunity, next time you're in Vegas, definitely go check out the Zappos experience. It's a super cool way of, they still do these awesome tours, Daniel, where you can walk through the whole Zappos headquarters. You can kind of see people in action. They still do an awesome job of showing folks how they thought about this and how they built it into their DNA as the company scaled from a small little company, Daniel, to a multiple billion-dollar company years later. And you're right, they were thinking about CX and EX, and they were showing, and they were leading by example, probably before many other companies started to really kind of bake this into their day-to-day customer management and into their day-to-day playbooks.
I mean, the importance of employee experience, we have, our mission, right, is, we want to create the customer experience that people want to have in the world aspirationally, right? So, it's our job to then think about our own employee experience with people on our team, all the way through what is it like to be an employee at one of our customers, right? We call our customers partners because we think of it as a very tight partnership. Yep. And if I could share just a brief anecdote, just, kind of how this has played out on the employee experience side.
100%. Yeah.
So there's a brand that we work with. They're called Happiest Baby. They make a product called the Snoo, which is a high-end bassinet that has the benefit of helping babies that might have a more difficult time sleeping stay asleep. And there's also kind of safety components to this, right, around SIDS and stuff like that. But the main thing is, like, colicky kid, you're willing to invest in an extremely nice sleep product for your sanity as a parent, right?
Big time.
Parents, if you're a first-time parent, I have three children. These sleepless nights can really create some very difficult situations. Now, what you then have on the employee side at Happiest Baby is you've got people who their job is to attend to a customer that might be in a tough spot, right? I mean, it might be 2:00 in the morning. They might be frazzled for a month straight of sleepless nights, and they need help, right?
Yep.
And those situations are requiring a lot of emotional energy for the employees of Happiest Baby. What was happening at Happiest Baby, though, and this is probably something a lot of people can relate to, is they didn't have an easy way internally of figuring out what is the stuff that is like tier 1 versus triage, ER tier 3, we need to get this person taken care of right away. Sometimes it's just a product question someone has. It might be a where's my order type of question, but it was all getting kind of jumbled up. And as a result, they would get a backlog. They weren't necessarily able to be as responsive to the parent that was messaging them or trying to call them right in the middle of the night. And then you've got frustrated customers. And when you've got frustrated customers, what does that do to your employees? Your employees feel burnt out, right?
Definitely.
And this is what they were talking to us about, right? Oh my gosh, our employees are feeling burnt out. They're not, partly because they feel badly because we're kind of letting people down sometimes.
Definitely.
And so this idea of what is the virtuous cycle that then we are trying to create as a brand, right? If we can set up our customer service as an organization in a way that allows us to triage different ticket types in different ways, right? I know we're kind of getting into the way it kind of works, but this is the type of audience that we're talking about here, right? And if we can do this right, and this is kind of what happened with them, right? Where the only people that were then reaching the Happiest Baby folks were the ones that were having immediate triage needs, but they were able to get to them right away.
Yep.
And that unlocked this like kind of virtuous cycle moment where you've got happy employees because they're never living in a backlog situation. They're never kind of scrambling to get to the stuff that's in the way of them getting to the really important customer issues.
Yep, absolutely.
And they're happier. And guess what? Their interactions with their customers are even better because they're feeling fresh. They're feeling like they have something to give emotionally to a difficult customer. You see it in the CSAT scores, you see it in the NPS scores, but those are like lagging indicators in some ways.
Big time.
Right?
They definitely are. Yeah.
So I think that when you focus on how do we get our employee, you have to start by asking them, hey, what is making this employee experience subpar? Like
Totally.
What is happening right now? And this is what they did. They talked to the people and they solved that issue. And then it helped the customer.
Yep. That's huge. And I love that we're hitting on this first big pillar of team, because team and employee management and employee engagement, it is absolutely critical, especially in a growth company, Daniel, where you're depending on frontline individuals to help you with the cycling or to help you with the optimization or to help you with the evolution of the product or the service, where those frontline folks, whether they're sales, whether they're customer success, whether they're customer operations, whatever you're calling them at your startup or at your growth focused company, these guys and gals are hearing the stuff you just nailed it 100 times a day, or they're looking at 100 tickets a day. They're seeing which major consternation points are happening again and again and again, i.e., hey, maybe you should float those to the top of next month's OKRs because you could probably solve a lot of CX and EX pain just by tackling some of those big painful moments that continue to happen. But the last part too is it involves that collaborative piece. It allows for that team collaborative involvement and energy in pushing a business forward. And so, Daniel, with that being said, I'd love for you to kick us off into this first CX pillar of team. I'd love to learn a little bit about what's the team at Simplr look like today. Give us a sense for sort of how you and the team have gone about growing, building, expanding as the business has gotten bigger and as you've brought on more and more customers, and give us a sense for what the lay of the land looks like inside of the Simplr team today. What type of roles or what type of teams or departments are really helping to build some of the things that you guys are focusing on as you build your business?
Yeah. So just a little bit of context of, kind of about our business so that people can understand why we're kind of structured the way we are. So you'd kind of used this Uber type of analogy. I think that's in some ways it's easy for people to then latch onto and understand like how we are also structured as an organization. So we are a technology company, like Uber is a technology company that connects, in our case, a human cloud network of independent contractor people that are out there that have been vetted by us, that are on our technology platform. We connect them to people's customer service inquiries.
Okay.
Through our technology. Our technology is then embedded into the technology, like the help desk platform of our customer.
Awesome. Okay.
So if you have Zendesk, for instance, then we just kind of like sit within Zendesk, and then our human cloud network is getting brought into somebody's ability to answer questions through Zendesk. So as a result, we have an operations team that is then responsible for helping us manage this very large network at this point of many thousands of people that are then interacting with the customer service inquiries of our team. So that we have that whole team that's working on that. We have about 125 actual full-time employees at our company right now. We've been growing pretty quickly. We're about 4 years old. And we do have a kind of go-to-market, engine, which consists of a marketing team. I have the business development function. So we have a team of BDRs. We have about 15 BDRs at our organization. And they're going out and interacting with brands. We work with a lot of retail e-commerce brands, but not exclusively, but that's kind of the main focus there. We have a demand generation team. This is kind of existing still within the marketing organization. We've got a demand generation function. We have PR, we have design, we have product marketing, because we've got product features that we're showing people about how what we do is possible, basically, because it's a new model for a lot of people. We have a sales leader, which has the sales organization, and we have a partner success team that is working directly with our partners. And we have a product team, right? We have because we are a tech company, we've got a head of our product team, who's also our CTO. And then we also have an engineering team, right? So we've got a team of engineers as well. So that's kind of the way that we're set up as a company.
I love it. I think number one, it sounds like, Daniel, you've got your hands full. There's a lot of different moving parts with all those different teams and departments. And I know every listener is thinking the same thing, where that's a big part of the beauty, I think, and the excitement and the just the general ownership or responsibility of being an incredible customer experience and customer success leader in today's world, which is, Daniel just plotted out, we are connected and intertwined and webbed across all of those functions. And I think when you really take a step back and think about some companies that are doing a kick-ass job with CX and CS optimization and scaling efforts, they take the time to understand that a customer journey is a customer journey, right? So from the very first minute that you even know what a brand is, or know what a product is, or know what a service even is, or what it's called, or what it does, that is the beginning part of that customer journey, right? And as you start to bring them through the different buckets of being aware that a thing is there, to considering that it might be an option that your team or your business or your department wants to maybe use or maybe invest in, all the way to converting them and actually making them a real customer that's a living, breathing thing that you've got to take care of and foster the relationship on. Onboarding is a big one. I know that, again, because I think with Simplr, Daniel, from our conversation last week, some of the things you guys are doing, onboarding's got to be a big part of it, because there is strategic partnership levels there. You guys are not just coming in and popping something in. There is definitely a strategic partnership that goes underway there, but then all the way to keeping people around, right? Renewals, retention, loyalty, all those other facets. But it sounds like you've got a fun part of the business, my friend.
I do. And, we've got, we also have, I didn't mention this before, we also have a community function, which reports into me, but, Trish, who leads that up, and her team that's working on building a community that is not just our customer community, right? It's called CX Life.
Okay.
It's just a community of practitioners. We've got mentors, and we've got people that are earlier in their career that are looking to grow their career in CX. And we think of that, in many ways as part of what we are trying to do from a customer experience. Like, we want to have this community that I think of as kind of a pure give, right? In the sense that it doesn't have some like secret pipeline number behind it that it's trying, you know what I mean? Like it's just go out there, plant a bunch of seeds of goodwill.
Totally.
And we know it will come back to us in ways that may be non-linear, right? It might not be that person, but it might be the person who they talked to about how helpful CX Life has been for their career over the past year. And it just so happens that that person might then become a Simplr customer.
I love it. And there's a lot of companies that are doing a phenomenal job with really leveraging this idea of community building or knowledge sharing or community-based knowledge sharing, which is frankly the best, because let's just call it what it is. Modern consumers, we're all similar, man. Daniel, we often go, whatever, it doesn't matter what we're buying. We go to see what the market says about a product or a brand. Is it 5-star? Is it 1-star? Is it great? Is it not so great? And then you get into your granular search facets of whatever you're personally looking for as a buyer, like whether it's the tech part or the service part or the support part or what. We've all got our own little willies and wares we like to chase and follow. But like, I think that that's super, super cool. And you're absolutely right, where that type of value first, information based giving and sharing and community building, especially again, pandemic, we talked about this the other day, but the last 2 years, man, companies got to get creative with the way that they're thinking about how you can make this new world and this new remote working facet, make it more personalized, make it more community based, make it more many of us are sitting at home in our home offices doing exactly what we were doing before, but like, to get some of that socialization or to get some of that connectivity with a brand or a business or a strategic partner, that stuff's huge, guys. It's another way that you're continuing to keep this world feeling real and not completely digital, not like where everything is like this. But Daniel, I'd love to jump into the second CX pillar of tools. So you lay the land for how the team is kind of laid out at Simplr. I'd love to hear you talk for a couple minutes about tools. As Simplr's grown, a couple things, as you work with some incredible brands, and I know that those brands have a lot of their tools, and a lot of what you're doing is you're interfacing and you're connecting and you're trying to help them with some of the client needs that they have. What is the evolution of your Simplr toolkit look like? What are some of the tools that you guys have used, and then how has that fueled the way that you've built Simplr technology and the tool that you guys are building? I'd love to just kind of hear how you and the team think about tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the foundational level, in many ways, the help desk is is what we see as the main way that companies are then interacting with their customers, and for better or worse, right? And there are, I think, a fair amount of deficiencies that that we see in the way that some of the help desk solutions are set up. But at the same time, it's like there's a lot of data there. It's very unstructured data, and so we have built technology that both, I think, helps structure that data so that you can get insights back from what you're actually seeing with your customer interactions, as well as allowing our network of the human cloud, right? That we talk about, this human cloud. It allows them to then be hyper specific, and kind of like instantly trained, in the moment training is a better way of thinking about it. So yeah, I mean, help desk solutions, I mean, we use one, and we've, all of our customers, that we interface with use them, whether it's, and we don't promote any one help desk solution over another, but Zendesk, Gladly, Salesforce, Service Cloud, Customer with a K, are the kind of main things that we see out there in the market, again, on this kind of more on this retail slant that we have. I would say an internal use technology that has been incredibly helpful on the kind of go-to-market side. When I say go-to-market, I'm referring to the 3 legs of that stool, which is sales, marketing, and partner success, right? The customer success function, has been Gong, which is a call recording software that allows us to do a couple of things. The main thing that we are doing is we are able to review a call that we had, right? But a couple of things that are really useful for us. One is that we can hear the words that our customers, our prospective customers, are actually using in real life.
Yep.
So there's a lot of ivory tower marketing that I think is done generally. And to combat, by that, I mean, hey, we think this is what people want and how they would talk about it, right? And words matter, right? The words that you put into ads, the words that you put into your email templates, You want to prove to people and build trust and credibility through speaking the same way that they do.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's been extremely helpful for us to have Gong, and our sales team also knows when to look out for certain things, and then they can easily kind of let us know, like, here's a little 2-minute snippet of somebody talking about how they found us, for instance, that could give us insights into improving ways that we can find more customers, or things, specific things that they said that they were looking for.
Daniel, I love that you call this one out, man, because again, like for some of our frontline directors and senior managers right now who are thinking about ways of how you're going to fine tune next year's operation, or how you're going to increase that net revenue retention, or how you're going to reduce that churn mitigation goal that leadership just put in front of you. Daniel just nailed it, where if you're not already using any type of recording solution, whether it's Gong or whether it's any of the other leading, voice software components, there's other ways you can do this, guys. Just take the ability to find or to start socializing some of the best customer facing calls of the week, and go the opposite way, some of the worst ones. And guys, I mean this both internally and externally. Sometimes you have incredible customer conversations or phone calls or Zoom chats where like they say everything perfectly in line that almost feels like it just matched the script perfectly for how you're supposed to do a perfect conversation in a flow. And then do the flip of it. Do the ones where everything goes wrong. And even maybe some of your executive team members would have a hard time managing some of the curveballs that customer's whipping it at you. But the point is like, whatever the cadence is, whether it's weekly, whether it's bi-weekly, monthly, even if it's just once a month, your customer facing team gets to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. That is an easy way for socializing some of those learnings and those findings, or better yet, just kind of understanding how to increase the tribal knowledge, right? Because your great reps, or your super seasoned, experienced reps who know how to manage every one of those inbounds, versus maybe some of the folks that they're brand new. Maybe they're inside of your company for, it's only been 30, 60, 90 days. They're brand new. They're still getting their number of at-bats to a place where they even know how to hit those types of pitches. That is an easy way for getting your team ready to rock and roll for the new year, and really making sure that you're giving them pointed, detailed examples of how to do an exceptional job managing some of these specific inbounds.
Yeah, and you also mentioned this, but some of the knowledge base type of stuff, so that you don't just have siloed information within the organization. So we're looking at bringing on a knowledge management solution, which will be great for helping, because as we're scaling and bringing on a lot of people, it's great for, hey, like, what's the lay of the land here? What am I supposed to know? What are the policies? What are the procedures?
Right.
And also some of the positioning. And then we also have Seismic, which we're using as a sales enablement solution.
Awesome.
Which is, we just got a shout out actually in our sales weekly sales call today. We brought on a new sales rep, and our head of sales was like, you know what, he's going to have a much easier time getting up this learning curve, because we have all of these great assets and we have them organized in a really logical way within Seismic, so that we'll be able to get people up to speed. And lastly, I think I would just mention from a tools perspective, as you get larger as an organization, you've got, and I think this is particularly important in a remote working environment where we've got people in different places in different time zones. You need some type of project management software, something that you can adhere to process. On the marketing side, there tends to be quite a bit of process when you look at the for instance, if we want to build a webinar, we want to build an ebook, or we want to, build some type of meaty asset that's going to go from conception, writing, editing, and then design. This stage gate process can end up creating huge amounts of problems with people having too much on their plate and getting frustrated and working with each other and missing deadlines if you don't have it kind of set up in that way. So we use Asana for that. People, there's Basecamp. I've seen other different solutions for this, but the day that it feels like, hey, we've got specialized roles to do these different things, now you probably will benefit from a productivity software like that, a project management software.
I love it. So those are awesome, Dan. You guys got a bunch of awesome different tools. Definitely understand why that's helped to kind of bridle the growth and continue to put Simplr on such a great path in terms of working with some of these awesome brands that you guys are working with. You mentioned Seismic. Dan, I'd love to jump into the third CX pillar of process, because I think that's what you're starting to hit on, which is like man, one of the hardest parts of keeping it all together in a high paced, growth focused company, it's managing the evolution of learnings. It's managing the evolution of how the processes really truly do change, right? The things that you're doing in the first year are often wildly different than year 4. And then here's another thing, like what you're doing when it's Daniel and a couple people on the team versus when it's 100 or 200 or 500 souls helping to build every day. Process changes fast there. So I'd love for you to spend a couple of minutes just talking about some of the things. So you mentioned seismic, that's huge. I'd love for you to maybe even go deeper, but like, what are some of the other ways you guys have managed the process side of the growth, whether it's playbooks or whether it's standard operating procedures? You mentioned the knowledge base part. I'd love for you to dig a little further on the process side.
Yeah. So it's funny even to just have you ask this question and then be able to reflect on it. So I've just a little background here. Right? So this is the third startup that I've been at now over the past, let's call it 10 years coming up here in a few months. And I've joined each of these startups where the startup is, in that kind of either about a little bit of revenue, basically like $1 million, maybe kind of, of annual recurring revenue. So it has been, Simplr was a little bit farther along. But I mean, it's kind of in these just like really early days. Like the existing customer base when I've started was a hodgepodge of whatever you can kind of get, and then it becomes a question of, well, how do we then build an engine of pipeline and then grow a business in some type of predictable way? It's always lumpy at the beginning, and the beginning lasts longer than everyone thinks. But how do you do it in some kind of predictable way? The way that we were running marketing programs and thinking about campaigns when I joined almost 2 years ago was very much kind of like, short-sighted, right? I mean, it was like driven by a good idea that either the leader of marketing would have or somebody else in the organization would have. And then it was, it was kind of like shiny penny syndrome, or, the squirrel analogy, where it was like, hey, let's go do this. And then everyone starts kind of doing that. And then 2 weeks later say, well, I don't know if that's working. How about we just go and do this? And that would be whether it was, an event to go to or a type of content to create. And I think that organizations benefit from, even though startups are really fast paced, and I would think that everybody on my team would agree that it feels very fast paced. But there's a difference between being fast paced and then being just frenetic.
Yeah.
Like, are you just kind of like churning
totally
the wheels and running straight into the ground like a roadrunner analogy, right?
Yeah,
right? Or are we like running in one direction consistently in a way that feels like we're making progress and moving forward?
Yep.
And in order to do that well, I think you have to start by planning better, right? So you have to start by saying, okay, it might feel almost ridiculous to think about a year out because we haven't been necessarily thinking that far out. But the reality is we need to do an annual kind of plan. Now we might change things. Things might change, but we need to start by saying, what are going to be the, and on a marketing sense, right? It's like, okay, who are the target customers we are going after? What are going to be the people, if there are different buyer personas, or what's a singular buyer persona, who are we going to be selling to? What is the positioning that we're going to have to that person? And now let's create some campaigns that will go after them. Yeah. And you then have to plan, and you then have to commit to that plan. And I think one of the things that's hard, especially if there is a dynamic of like, I'm not saying this is particularly what had happened here, but I mean, there is a sense of like, hey, you can have a CEO that is more experienced and has certain opinions, and then you have other people on the team maybe that are less experienced, and there becomes a dynamic of, this is a good idea, so then just go do this, right? And there, I think, comes a point where you have to be able to say as an organization, yes, because you probably want to say yes.
Yeah.
But it has to be yes, but.
Yeah, right.
You have to be able to say yes, but that means that we are going to have to not do this other thing. Or yes, but that means that we are going to have to do it 3 months from now rather than 3 days from now.
Big time.
Right.
Yep.
being able to communicate to the organization, here's what we're going to do, here's why we're doing it. By the way, if you do not think that this is a good idea, please tell us, because
Raise
we
your
don't
hand.
necessarily have all the answers, but we're trying to execute well here. And then from there, I think things kind of start to feel like they fall into place with people. Then you start to need to have technologies that can facilitate some of this improved process.
Big time.
Right. And so that's what some of the tech that we were just talking about is technology that comes from feeling like, oh, we actually know where we're going and this is how we're trying to get there. So Seismic was part of that. We have created, and so one of the things that we did this past year here was we created a go-to-market playbook, because we wanted there to be an easier way for us to bring on a new sales rep and say, here are the qualifying questions that we know if we ask early in a sales conversation will help us figure out if there's a mutual fit, and we'll set up future sales conversations.
Yep.
And here are the assets that we then have as we go along this selling process, because they're going to be evaluating us against other vendors, and there's going to be a technology review process, and there's going to be, right? We kind of know how someone has to buy. So then it's up to us to create a process that makes it easy for them to buy us, basically.
Big time.
And that's really what our go-to-market playbook is, and that was I don't know, some people probably would say that the creation of that go-to-market playbook was a root canal. And never having had a root canal, I can only imagine that I'm saying that it was painful in some ways. But I also think that probably the root canal analogy is good, because after you have a root canal, everyone goes, oh my God, I feel great.
Yeah, big time.
Right?
100%.
And that's where we're at now, right? We've got our sales enablement person, Claudia, in our team, who has this go-to-market playbook that she can then use as a scaling point for bringing on new people and for getting other people up this learning curve quickly, right? We have a goal internally to be able to promote BDRs who are interested in becoming AEs, right? We want to be able to facilitate that journey in their career. And we now have a playbook which allows us to have a process to get that person up to speed very quickly. And they obviously need, at bats there, they need to have sales conversations to do it. But we feel great about, about where we are. Again, this was, that was call that a full 6-month process there. But I feel really great with where we're at now with that. And we are now at a place where we want to expand that playbook process into our partner success team, where we can create more repeatability. I think in many ways, everything kind of starts, I'm motioning from a funnel from top down, right? So everything kind of starts up here. You got to get some of your process repeatable to get people into the funnel. And then as the water is flowing down into there and you see where there's little holes in that bucket, you then figure out how to plug those holes, right? And I think it should go in that order, by the way. Start with acquiring your customers, and then also figure out from a process perspective how to make sure the way you're working with them is streamlined. I mean, you don't want to be fumbling working with your customers. That's not what I'm advocating, but I'm just talking about from a process perspective.
Absolutely. So awesome stuff on process here, Daniel. And just a couple quick thoughts. Number one, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I always have used this terminology with past teams. Proper planning prevents poor performance. And that's not Adrian's. I took it from one of my old business professors always used to say this to us. And when you're in your late teens, early 20s in school, you're like, all right, pal. Yeah. Okay. But after you do 15 plus years in the workforce and you've worked with a bunch of different teams and a bunch of different leadership groups, that guy was spot on. He was 100% right. And I think, Danny, you got into it, but proper planning, preventing poor performance, especially with our listeners right now, they're building companies, they're building their teams, they're thinking about either their customer journey or they're thinking about their customer pipeline and funnel. That's the stuff that can fuel how you get really, really good at establishing OKRs. Once you get really good at it, or whatever you're doing, whatever your strategic road mapping or whatever your strategic goal planning that you're doing organizationally, it doesn't have to just be OKRs. There's a million ways you can slice and dice this stuff, but that's another part of going back to the front of the call. This is how you keep a team of people on your ship very well informed about where that ship is going, and they can make decisions as to whether they like the path and they enjoy the path. But you made me think, Daniel, especially with many of today's growth focused companies, we got some smart birds building these companies. And if you're not letting those guys and gals know what is happening cross-functionally and across the organization, or if you're not giving them little reminders of sort of where that ship is sort of in the ocean at a given point and where directionally you're aiming at it, that's where consternation can build up internally. And then when you start going to plugging patches and trying to make sure that you're correcting where the water's getting in, Daniel, the companies that do this really well, they have a much easier time of filling and patching those holes. They have a much easier time of identifying sort of where some of that water is getting in faster, so you can keep the ship afloat in the type of way that it's going to work. And then lastly, it's just like you're letting smart people and smart employees and smart teammates come up with the ways that they can actually answer the how-to part of that, right? Because this is a complex thing and it is difficult, and every business and every industry's got a wild different set of components around that. But I love some of the ideas that you threw out there with us, Daniel. I'd love to jump right into the fourth and the final CX pillar of feedback. So I'd love for you to so you guys are already doing some incredible things in Simplr with just the way that you set up strategic partnerships with every account and with every customer. But Daniel, I'd love to hear you spend a couple minutes talking about some of the ways that you and the team have leveraged feedback to grow the business, grow the team, grow the brand, and really continue to get better and better and better at how you're going to fine tune and provide some of these solutions for your customers as you grow.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very low ego approach to how we want to get better, right? I mean, you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and understand where you're at, and I mean, it's great to get flattering feedback, and obviously good news can kind of fuel people and make everybody kind of feel good about where you're going. But, we as an organization who strives to outperform, I mean, in many ways, right, we're coming in and saying, hey, we have shown that we can outperform internal teams. Performance, right? When you look at it through the lens of CSAT, for instance, right? Because we run a CSAT survey on our people taking these inquiries and resolving issues. And to accomplish that, we have had to be very brutally honest about where are we doing well and where are we not doing well. So we've built feedback loops both into the mechanisms of us getting direct feedback through our technology from our customers, right? Via surveys, right? But then it's also feedback that you get directly from people. Like, hey, what is working with this? How are we doing well? How are we not doing well? So we have quarterly reviews, strategic reviews with our customers.
Okay.
Where we sit down and we are saying, hey, give people an opportunity to say, hey, what do you want to see, right? And we don't kind of deny those things, right? I mean, I think, it's like you have to just be open and honest with people and kind of accept where you're at. And then we also use those as an opportunity to communicate where we want to go, and what we want to be able to help somebody do. So that's really important. I would also say, going back to just the internal employee side, I think we've got a fairly robust mechanism for giving people internal feedback so that we all get better, right? So we, as a senior leadership team, we are doing 360 reviews, right? So that we're understanding strengths and weaknesses and giving people an opportunity to say, hey, here's where we can get better. And then we implement a feedback mechanism on a managerial level with employees where it's really quick loops, right? Here's something that I observed. Here is something that you could do to improve that, right? And if you are coming at that from a place of caring and wanting to see somebody succeed and improve and grow and nurturing the improvement that they're having, and we have like a points-based, reward system called ACE that allows us to give people points for exhibiting our values as a company. then we're recognizing people for the growth that they're having. But we aren't doing it in a way that is, kind of fake. Like, hey, if you're struggling on something, it's my job as a manager to acknowledge what that is and to make sure that I am doing everything I can to help you improve on that. That's my job, right?
Yep.
And I think earlier in my career, I was wrong in thinking that the power associated with a managerial position meant that it was my job to point out the things that people were doing wrong so that I could elevate myself. And instead, it's this servant style leadership is really appealing to me, because it makes me realize, like, if somebody is deficient, that's on me, and it's my job to help them get better. And I think that the feeling comfortable kind of in what your role is supposed to be, and knowing that somebody could become your manager someday that you actually managed, like, what would you want that to feel like? Because I've seen that happen, right, at companies where people get moved around, and it is the case in many ways, that great people leaders do end up rising to the top of organizations.
100% agree with you, Dan. I couldn't agree more. And I'd say one of the coolest parts of the experience of working in a startup or a scale up or a growth focused company that's just really kind of building something brand new, building something from scratch, is what Daniel's talking about for the action takers out there, for people who aren't afraid to kind of roll up their sleeves, not only come up with a solution, but maybe even work with your boss on, hey man, I think I see these 3 possibilities. And then I know that you've got these budget or these resource restrictions. So then I've already thought that maybe the team could come together and do these 3 things over there. That's the type of stuff that, number one, you won't get that in a fully formed, fully organized, 50-year-old public company. You're not going to get that. You're definitely not, because there's already people that have done it and they've already built the playbooks. They've already built the process. They already understand how to do all these things that Daniel's talking about. But at these smaller growth companies, those are another way that you can set yourself apart, where you're going to come up with solutions. You're going to be able to willing and ready to take some of the burden of that on, or the heavy lifting of that on, or you're going to show the potential paths for why that ROI might be high enough where your manager or your leader needs to support you, get behind you and let you go run with it. That's another beautiful part of being a part of these growth companies. And I think that it's important to call it out. But Daniel, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before we wrap up today's episode, my friend, where can people find out more about you and the team at Simplr? And then is there any other things that you guys are working on, or is there anything else that you and your team, or that you want the CX Nation to know about in these upcoming months ahead, my friend?
Yeah, I'd love for people to be able to, connect on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. I do try to post regularly on LinkedIn. I've had to choose a social media platform and go with it.
Yeah, right.
It's like the planning part of the conversation. I was trying to do too many things, and it was like, I can't keep up.
Power of focus, my friend.
Power of focus. I'm really proud. I just co-authored a book. It's called Experience is Everything. It's out. It's available on Amazon on digital format as well as hardcover. So I would love for people to be able to check that out and hopefully glean some. There's some of the stuff we were talking about here today. There's a bunch more stuff in the book, and it's been something that I've been working on with Ang Tan for about a year, a little over a year actually.
Okay. Yeah. And congrats, by the way, Daniel. Me and you talked about this last week, man. Like, writing a book is no easy effort, my friend. So Dan, congrats to you guys on getting that out there. And we're certainly excited to check it out and put all those different lessons that you put out there into the book into use, man. It's a big thing for you to be super proud of, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then what about the team at Simplr? Where can people find out more about the incredible things that you guys are doing at Simplr?
Yeah, I mean, I would say check out our website. We have a big presence on LinkedIn as well. So if you're interested in kind of checking us out on LinkedIn as a company, it's simplr.ai. That's our URL as well. And then if you're interested in our CX Life community, you can find out about that at CX Life.
I love it. And guys, we'll share those links in the thread. But Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, my friend. It's super excited to hear the things you guys are doing at Simplr, and have a fantastic rest of the year, my friend.
Thank you very much. You too.